thank you, Claude, and thank you, the French INSEAD Alumni Association, for having us for this fourth year doing these master classes. And thank you all for joining us this morning. Indeed, this morning we'll explore a topic of vital importance, which is using imagination to reinvest businesses, people experience, and execution. So I'm Humblot-Ferrero. I'm a managing director and partner at BCG. I do work a lot in biopharma and for people transformation. I've supported leaders in developing strategies, industrial performance, digitalization, transformation. And with Fanny, we share the passion of leadership. And we've developed research over the past year. So today with us, we have a great panel composed of mature and balanced creative rationalists. That's the term of Fanny. They are both creative and both business people, which is the interest of the discussion this morning. They will share with us about their motivation, practical ways to develop creativity, their own creativity, but also the creativity of their teams and why it does matter. So first, a warm welcome to Albert Reed. It's an INSEAD MBA from 2000, Executive Chairman of Standard, former Managing Director of Condé Nast, author of The Imagination Muscle. He emphasizes the pivotal role of creativity in business, science, and arts. He advocates for fostering an environment where creativity thrives, encourages idea generation, and psychological safety. Albert believes that by tapping into both personal and team imaginative potential, organization can unlock limitless possibilities. So thank you for being with us this morning, Albert.
Great pleasure.
Secondly, I'm very pleased to welcome Laurent Martinez, Group CFO of Orange. Laurent has been serving as an Executive Vice President of Finance, Performance and Development as Orange since September 2023. He began his career at Astrium, the defense and aerospace subsidiary of Airbus, where he held several management positions in financial control. In 2004, he was promoted to finance director before being appointed director of controlling, performance and accounting of Airbus Group. He took over as managing director of Airbus Services Business Unit in 2025. And then in 2018, Laurent was appointed Chief Financial Officer at Alstom and member of the Executive Committee. So he's been a financial person over the past decades, but he has also a second career in parallel to this amazing one, which is he is a painter and he's been exhibiting his art for 20 years with great success. So combining numbers and art, this is the story that you will talk to us this morning, Laurent. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone.
And finally, let me welcome the now best-known Fanny Potier, 2001 INSEAD MBA, partner and director at BCG. She has a long experience in people and leadership strategy. She is the co-author of our generative leadership approach at BCG. She is convinced that leaders are more than ever key to unlock the change. Together, we believe that leaders need to let the world a better place than what they found it. And she's had a brilliant consulting career. And as Laurent, she is also a well-known artist for all of us. She's a ceramist. She's recently exhibited her art, and including 2 weeks ago together with Laurent. So I invite you to also look at what Fanny is exposing. So thank you all. Today, as I was saying, we are going to talk about how to use imagination to reinvest businesses, people, experience, and execution. So how do we use this imagination in our business world? Over the past 5 years, we've seen exponential rise of complexity. We've been talking about that and how leaders need to face this. Disruption in technology, shifting global dynamics, changes in the way we work. The traditional strategy may no longer be enough to navigate into this landscape, and we probably need to lean on a uniquely human capability, which is imagination. And I know there is, and we may want to discuss about that in the breakout. We know that generative AI can have some creativity, but what as human do we bring with this imagination? Because imagination isn't just a spark of creativity, it's a powerful tool of transformation. It allows us to rethink the boundaries of what is possible. We can, with imagination, innovate beyond the immediate, envisioning entirely new business model and customer experiences. We can build workplaces that inspire and engage, even in uncertain times. And we can execute with agility, finding clarity amidst complexity. But here's the challenge. Imagination doesn't thrive on its own. It needs to be nurtured. And for organization, it means that we need to create some cultures that foster curiosity, experimentation, and psychological safety. For individuals, it also means tapping into its own creative potential, its own creative imagination, not just to innovate, but also to stay balanced and resilient in this world. Together, we explore questions like, what role will imagination play in the future of work and technology? Why should leaders cultivate a culture of creativity in their organization? How can individuals and teams strengthen their imaginative thinking skill? These questions may seem abstract, they're not. They're a foundation for adapting and thriving in this environment. So as INSEAD alumni, you have the position to foster this topic also into your organization. This is the discussion we're going to have today. So let's begin. And let's begin with you, Albert. Maybe I'll stop sharing so that we can see you better. You have been writing a book on imagination whilst being a recognized business person. What drove you to do it from writing the book? And also you share some learnings on why creativity does matter for individuals, teams, and businesses.
Yes, I've had, like a couple of other people on this call, I've had a parallel life. I lead a double life in the sense that I run a business. I ran the Condé Nast business in the UK, and I run a newspaper business called the Evening Standard in London. But I've always been interested in writing and ideas, and I come from a family of writers, so writing is something that has always been in my blood. I came across this idea many years ago through a French writer called Jean-Claude Carrière, who many of you may know, who wrote in his memoirs of his experience with Louis Buñuel, the film director, how they would, at the end of each day of filming, they would go back to the hotel and then they'd each go to their rooms and they challenged each other to come up with an idea for a story. And then an hour later, they'd meet in the bar and talk about their stories. And Carrière says he did this in order to exercise their imagination muscle, this idea that the imagination is something that you need to work at, and you need to exercise in the way that you exercise. You go to the gym. You need to exercise your imagination, and this idea stayed with me. And I eventually started taking notes, and I put ideas together, and I wrote a proposal for a book, and I sent it to an agent, and it became a book that came out last year in the UK and this year in the US. And the conceit is this: it really is saying that the imagination is something that is malleable. It's something that is that we can flex and we can strengthen. It's a conceit at the heart of the book, where I ask readers to consider the possibility that the imagination is this thing that you can work at. And for me, this is a very powerful idea, and I think it's a very important idea that we have a systematic approach to how we think of ideas and idea generation. And this is something that benefits you enormously as an individual. And there's lots of research to prove that the imagination, being creative, applying your imagination in whatever direction you do, makes you happier, makes you more fulfilled, makes you more alive. And then there are the benefits to society of having an imaginative mindset that solves problems, that creates opportunities, that sees the world differently and allows people to expand their consciousness. And then there's business within that, and how businesses can grow through ideas, and where we can look at businesses in history and how they've grown through ideas. And really, my line is that the imagination in art, the imagination in science, and the imagination in business, it's all the same thing. It's all coming back to this central power, this magical force at the heart of us that drives all these innovations, all this growth, all this possibility that takes the world forward. So that's really what I'm saying in the book, that this is something that is enormously important and, in my view, underreported, understated, under-explained in the world we live in.
Thank you, Albert. And Fanny, yourself, you're also both a professional and an artist. Can you tell about these benefits of developing both paths? Maybe building on what Albert is saying, that being creative makes happier, more fulfilled, more alive. How do you combine these two lives, I would say, as a one? What are the benefits you see, and what are the struggles as well?
Yeah, so I was listening to what Albert was saying, and for me, these two paths, as you've called them, they're not two different things. They are, for me, I just see them as different facets of my personality. And one of the thinking I've had for many years now is that we can't be two different persons at work and at home, or in the professional and the personal space. And that's why I came up preparing for the masterclass with this term, which is creative rationalist, because I don't see myself as a pure rationalist, and I don't see myself as an artist either. For me, the past 10 years have been about integrating this dimension, both at home and at work, to show up as my better self. Originally, I mean, I've been educated in France, and I was told, you can be an engineer, so be one, and then you can pivot and do whatever you want. It is true to a degree, but it's not so true either. And though I'm still glad I did that, because that gave me the option to be where I am now as a creative rationalist. And I think if I look back at my career, my way of pivoting in the first place has been to choose consulting and the people angle, because both require a lot of creativity. That was not consciously expressed as, expressing my creativity. I've also been intrigued and passionate about artists for more than 20 years. For the people who know me, I've supported artists all that time as a sponsor. I've organized more than 50 exhibitions of the work of others. I've practiced different types of art. So to take Albert's words, I've developed that muscle for many, many years. I've been an actor in theater. I've played the piano, but I figured it was too time consuming. Been drawing, painting, and I discovered clay and pottery 10 years ago. And for me, that's the deal. And clay for me is such a holistic practice. It allows me to be whole. When I'm practicing clay, clay is about its culture, it's engineering, it's chemistry, it's art, it's meditation, it's imagination. And I can listen to content when I practice. I actually listened to Albert's book when I was doing some clay work. And that was okay. That was not a distraction. So when I'm at my art studio, I bring the rationalist in me, in sizing the work, in preparing for the exhibition that we did with Laurent 2 weeks ago, in thinking about pricing. Those dimensions I see missing in many of my artistic friends. And when I'm at BCG, I bring my artistic side, as you know, Marie, in approaching problems, in bringing mind expansion, as you were saying, Albert, to the team, in also creating some space for them to be different. And by making my difference explicit and by owning my difference. And I've also brought artists in the workplace to broaden perspective, to provide inspiration, and to also give opportunities to expose oneself and to show vulnerability. And maybe to take the last piece of your question, at the closure, so as you know, we've organized art residencies at BCG, and at the closure of the last one, the artists confirmed that there is so much to learn from artists or from developing as an artist. It's about lateral thinking, it's about building resilience, optimizing limited resource, all things which are very important in the current world we live in. Of course, maybe to close, there are struggles sometimes because, I mean, it's, again, to show yourself as an artist in the workplace, you need to own who you are. You need to demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability and expose yourself. It's also, when you talk, building muscles requires exercise and effort. So it's a lot about energy. So it's an activity, or those activities restore energy, but they take also energy to develop. And so sometimes there is a little bit of energy management which can come in the way.
Thank you, Fanny. Laurent, you also have nurtured these two lives for more than 20 years, which frankly can appear odd as being that much into numbers. I put it that in a black or white, but being an engineer myself, you seem to be very able to deep dive into very rational thinking, and at the same time have this very creative second life. Could you tell us about the urge and the motivation for this? What drove you there? And are these two aspects nurturing your own self? How does that fit together?
Yes, thank you. So, look, I started painting when I was 17 years old. So I grew up as a teenager and an adult while developing my painting and developing my professional careers at the same time. So I'm very much with what Fanny said, that we are one, and it is so important to stand as one person, one individual, and to be proud of what you can do in the various facets of your activities. So I always took it as a strength to have this sight on the side on the art and painting for me. As soon as I was able basically to stand and to basically evidence to my fellow professionals that I can be as well as a good professional and a good painter at the same time. And it opened me in many ways because exactly as you say, the stand of the person I was meeting when I was sharing that and opening, I don't know if it's a vulnerability, but opening this facet of what I'm doing is making another angle to communicate. And the professional life is all about communication, all about connecting with people, and the fact to have this stream of imagination with my painting, the fact to talk about that, to show on my iPhone what I'm doing, is opening a new channel of communication with the people I'm meeting. It can be bankers, it can be investors, it can be colleagues, it can be partners. When I open that, definitively I see another sense of communicating. So there is a lot of course, synergies between the two activities. The other one is as well to show to the teams, and I have large teams for sure, that there is many other things in life than being focused on the numbers. And there is so much to learn from other things. And for me, it's painting. For others, it can be anything else. And that we can bring what we are doing outside into our activities. And there is, I would say, value into that. And I can tell you that I'm probably the only CFO of the CAC 40 group in France, which is having an exhibition. And when I was saying that on my first day when I came in Orange 18 months ago, it was quite a surprise for a large bunch of my team. I'm convinced they saw me and they are seeing me a bit differently knowing that.
Thank you. I'm quite sure about that and this uniqueness. Albert, back to you to talk about how to actually bring creativity to the teams. When you're a leader, from your experience, how do you actually create that space and foster creativity?
Yes, I think it's quite difficult if you're the boss. If you're asking people, as Fanny said, to expose themselves, to risk ideas in front of the person who determines their career. I think that is a problem in the structure of companies. We have to find a way round. And that comes from both building an atmosphere of trust, but at the same time, one has to create an expectation of ideas. One has to have this feeling that ideas are what you come to work to have ideas, to execute ideas, to think differently about your job, and not just doing your job, but how to do your job better. And to get the sort of culture of, Thomas Edison, where he would have one small idea a week and a major invention every 6 months, and having this atmosphere of let's think of this, let's try that, is important, but it's also energizing for the team, and to some extent it determines who you hire. And obviously one can't spend the whole day having ideas and not get on with the job. It's about just having an atmosphere of what if we did this, what if we tried that, and also being able to accommodate this notion of bad ideas leading to good ideas. So when you're in the room, in the meeting, you might start with the most junior person, so they're not influenced by what the more senior people say, and allow something that maybe on the surface not so great, but actually provokes something in the minds of others that then leads to something interesting that you can take forward in your company. I think the other thing that is important is, as an individual, as a leader of a team, you have to make sure that you're not complacent, you're not arrogant, and you don't think to yourself at some level, well, I got here because I've been right more often than I've been wrong, because what was right before may not be right now, and the world changes around you. And I think, particularly as you get on in life, I think there's a sense that you've made a linear progress on the path to wisdom as you rise through the company, but actually the younger people around you are bringing fresh ideas which may challenge you, may make you feel, may in some way threaten your ego, may make you feel less powerful. But it's important to open yourself up to that and to acknowledge, particularly these days, that the world is moving around you, and what may have been true 20 years ago is no longer the case. Because we have this odd system in society where we spend the first 20 years of our life being educated, and then, apart from going to INSEAD, we largely don't educate ourselves in any formal sense for the next 60 years. And that is an odd thing to do when you think about it, given the particularly in certain areas where the world changes around you. And I think that's an important element to remember, that you're that in an office, you may be the boss, you may be the leader, but you have to have the wisdom and the open-mindedness and the confidence to let ideas in from all sources. And I think the other thing you've got to do is to think about the structure of your business and how you can remove barriers to idea generation, whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's certain departments getting in the way, because there are lots of evidence, lots of studies show that employees complain that they're held back by the culture of their companies. And I think we have to find a way of removing those barriers. And one of the things that at Condé Nast, for example, I think the reason that has been quite a creative company is because it was structured in a way that each of the titles was a small business in itself. So we never had more than 30 or 40 people within one unit, and they could make their voices heard, and they could move quickly, and they could try things. And I think that is something that, at BCG you'll be looking at all the time, but how one structures a company, how one structures an office, the physical environment to create an atmosphere of idea generation, I think is one of the challenges and one of the opportunities for businesses as they seek to become more creative and to seek to make themselves agile and responsive to the world around them.
You mentioned something that I found interesting, because when we talk about creativity and imagination, we may think some of our first ideas are stupid, right? Or irrelevant or uninteresting. And I like your point about having also small ideas that would lead to something bigger. How do you actually foster that over time to some extent, right? Because you have this timing perspective of we need to create something big, but still it's a step-by-step approach. How do you keep people motivated and engaged into that process?
Well, I think you have the culture of idea generation in terms of the meetings and the drumbeat of how you interact with each other. I think ideas don't have to be world changing. They can be small ideas. They can be an idea of how to fix something quite small in the way you run your business. But the cumulative effect of all these ideas makes for a better business and makes for a more successful organization.
Thank you. Laurent, as a leader, how do you stay imaginative? How do you keep those two lives thriving after 20 years of exhibitions in particular? How do you reinvent yourself as a painter? How does it feed your finance role over time?
So as a painter, it's all about opening the eyes. So I'm spending a lot of time in the galleries, museum, looking at other things that can be Lascaux, which was the topic of our exhibition with Fanny. So back 20,000 years ago, that can be very art from the last few years. And it's all about work. And I just want to add that in my sense, imagination without work, without handicraft, because painting is about as well chemical, is about colors, is about techniques, goes for me to a limited end. And that's very much valid for the painting, but that's very much valid for the work. You can have a brilliant imagination, but if you don't have the resilience to work hard, to deep dive, to get into the substance, to connect the dots, I think that imagination can be vain. So, and Einstein, of course, a genius among the genius. Leonardo da Vinci, genius among the genius. You can take any of them. These guys, they have both huge imagination powers and huge work capabilities and focus. And that's what I try in a very humble way to do in my painting work by trying new techniques, new colors, new subjects. That's what I'm trying as well with my team to push them because I'm leading finance guys, which are maybe not the most imaginative guys on the planet when it comes to a company, but still I'm pushing them to open boundaries, to come with new solution. Indeed, I like what Albert has been saying. There is so much to learn from the new generation when it comes to that. And sometimes it's so complex to make the older generation move into this field.
You find it's harder with this new generation than when it was?
No. I think it's easier with the new generation and more complex with the older generation.
With the older generation.
Right.
You mentioned that you're also pushing your people at work to find new ideas, and wouldn't you say still even in finance you have to have some creativity sometimes just to find ways to have new ideas to develop? Of course, the frameworks, lots of things are regulated to some extent, right? But I guess you still need to have some reflection and some imagination to find new ways, don't you think?
Absolutely, that's what I'm seeing on a daily basis. I'm saying that the old way of finance guys is no person, and I'm always saying it's exactly the opposite. We need to say yes with, yes but, yes, and this is the ways. That's the way I phrase that toward my team. So that we get into a solution and not, I would say, only reminding the rules and the boundaries, which is very much one of the DCs of large companies, which is a large regulation, lot of course of boundaries and silos that we need to push up, which is definitively so important.
Thank you, Fanny. I had a question for you on the residency at BCG. You've been integrating art within BCG for the past years. This was not the first residency, but we had a second this year. So why did you, and what probably triggered this at BCG? Why did BCG also decided to organize those residencies? What can you share with us as well on the learnings?
Yeah. So, well, as I said before, first of all, there was a small part of it which was self-serving and which was about bringing self or like-minded people in my workplace. And I've always, in my previous firm, I brought artists as well, so I organized exhibition in the workplace. Marie has seen me join BCG 10 years ago, and she knows that I came with this idea of bringing art to BCG in Paris. And the second part is because, as Albert was saying, and I think what Laurent was saying as well, is that we desperately need artists in the world now, because we need to reinvent almost everything, and we need to elevate from the current state, which is only bringing anxiety and fear in people. And artists have always been able to read weak signals, coming from the side, bringing beauty, humor, sometimes not necessarily beauty, but a different way of looking at the world, and many other things, as I mentioned before. I also mentioned, and Albert, you mentioned that as well, that engaging in a creative activity is proven to reinforce well-being. And if you look at, again, the state of companies today, where so many people are in burnout or close to burnout, we also need to bring them in the workplace for that reason. And the other side is that if we want to continue having artists in the world, we need to support them, because the public funds, public budgets have shrinked significantly, and they need resources, right? And the resources need to come from the private world now. And I just want to, as I mentioned also, my trade in art is about visual art, but I would define art very broadly, talking about music, writing, visual art. So there's not one way to engage in a creative activity. We are all very different, and we have different preferences when it comes to expressing our creativity. And so with all those beliefs, they came together through the sponsoring of art residencies at BCG. And if I talk about the last one, I think the intent was that we wanted to of course develop creativity in all our businesses by applying our philosophy, which is be logical, be creative, be critical. We also wanted to develop and strengthen collaboration in teams across levels, across cohorts, across. We've moved recently in a new workplace which has many different floors, so across floors as well. So we wanted also to cement collaboration with the art residency. We also wanted to provide an opportunity to create bridges between the analytical and the creative approaches. And if I want to simplify things here, bringing collaboration between the right and the left brains in our colleagues. And finally, we wanted to promote the contemporary art scene by encouraging innovative synergies between art, science, and technology. And it's not new. Others do that, and in that regards, we just lean on what others are doing. I think if we think about I really encourage everybody, as you mentioned at the beginning, Marie, we're all leaders in this room. And the invitation with this masterclass on creativity is that you bring that to your workplace, to your people, recognizing that in many systems, the creative side is not necessarily developed in early education of children. So there may be a struggle here, because companies are rational environments, and they put a lot of value on the mind, on the left brain. So in terms of, if I look back at the couple of residencies that I've been part of for now, I think success factors would be that it's co-constructed. And for the next one at BCG, we are going to actually ask people what modality they would like to choose for the art residency, meaning that do they want to continue with visual art, which was the case of the previous one, or do they want that we bring music or theater or writing in as a modality. It's important to find the right artist for you and for your culture, because at the end of the day, you need someone who's able to understand your people, to engage with them, because the value is in the engagement with the artist. To do that, you also need to put in place mediation. So there's an effort to put on mediation, to explain, to provide depth, to create meaning to the people and for the artist as well. Creating touch points to foster engagement with the artist. And as always, with any change initiative, it's important that senior leaders engage and role model the benefits and engage with the artist and are visible in doing that. Again, going back to a point that was made several times, to give permission to all colleagues to expose themselves, to demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability by engaging in the creative activities that are brought by the art residency.
Thank you, Fanny. There's a question in the chat that is somehow also linked to what you say on giving permission to expose themselves, on giving permission, on being exemplary, probably as a leader, to allow all the colleagues to as well open up into art and creativity. The question from Corinne is on how to create an atmosphere of idea generation that is really beneficial for all of the teams. It seems to be linked to a feeling of being in a safe place, a way of handling failure in a constructive way. We've been discussing a lot of the risk adverse culture that we may have sometimes in company. So how is it managed in the organization? Maybe that's a question for you, Albert.
Well, as I said before, it's not easy when you're the boss and you determine the economic circumstances of these people, and they, their careers depend on you. So I think that there's an inbuilt tension there, which you have to try and overcome, and to create this atmosphere of psychological safety where they feel able to take risks and to say things that may be stupid, because, as I said, a bad idea can lead to a good idea. I suppose the only thing I'd add to that is I think the power of humor, of jokes, of laughter, of play, of a sense of humor where you're kind of implicitly saying, this isn't that serious. This is meant to be fun. This is meant to be, making connections that may seem a little bit random at first. I think that's one thing you can do that really instills the possibility of idea generation from people from different ranks in the hierarchy of an organization. So I would say humor. Don't underestimate humor.
Thank you, Fanny. You had a comment?
Yeah, I think it's also about persistence, because I mentioned the word change. If you want to create such a culture, you need to be persistent as a leader and recognize that, you to create permission for others to engage in those activities or take risks. It takes some time. I mean, you mentioned building muscles several times before. If you prepare yourself for a marathon, I don't like very much sport metaphor, but I would use one though. You need to exercise, and exercise, it takes time. You need to build new habits, and to build new habits, you need to practice for at least a few months. So it's not because, and I'm saying that because, like, for the residency we just had, we wanted to reach I would say we like numbers at BCG, so we define a certain target of reach to colleagues, and we barely made that number. But we still believe that it was a great success because we were able to reach a decent number of colleagues, and we will continue. And we will just pivot. As I mentioned, we're going to offer moving from visual art and offer another type of creativity if people prefer that, or other people will prefer maybe music or things like that. And that's just a way to be persistent. And in time, we aim at bringing more people, even more people in.
Laurent, you've been serving your whole career on CAC 40 companies. I'm curious to see whether you see differences between French headquarter, French cultured company versus Anglo-Saxon or just international company in the way they can express themselves and generate new ideas and creativity and the way they act upon it.
No, it's a great question, and I had a chance to work with I would say people from Chile to Japan when I was in Airbus, mainly because Airbus is very international companies and very international customers by definition. So I've been working with airlines from all over the world, and working with them directly. There is definitely huge differences. The worst probably is Japan. I don't want to be caricatural, but of course, Japan is very specific when it comes to imagination and taking risk. So what can I say? I think that there is a common subject, which is when you are leaders, we are basically, our duty is not to continue what has been done in the last 10 years in a ballistic manners, is to find what are the inflection points moving forward. And we are not the one which will be getting on the way, or defining each of the practical steps to go on these new avenues. But I think that our job is definitively to figure out where we want to make transformation, where we want to move from the current trajectories we have to another trajectories. And then from that, of course, get everyone in the teams work in terms of how to make it happen, basically, and potentially change the new trajectories by giving time. And that would be my second message, is that imagination, again, I'm back to the fact that imagination is a lot of work as well. And what is the more scarce resources for all of us as professionals is time. And leave time for our teams, ourselves first, and our teams to open these new trajectories is so important. And that means, you know, the Google stories of having half a day free for employees. There is plenty of option and practicalities to do that, but I feel that this subject is essential into how we can have imagination at work.
Building on your comment on Japan, there's a question in the chat saying that Japan is interesting since they have probably been the most successful in creativity in their manufacturing with Lean, very successful with their services. Could there be any specific reason for that?
Well, I'm not an expert in Japan, so I've been working with them far to be an expert, but definitively, I mean, they are. I mean, it's all about discipline. It's discipline in execution. So there is imagination in terms of the way to optimize and define the processes. It's a lot about then discipline and very strong push in terms of execution, which is probably one of the key talent of these Japanese companies.
There could be something, the way I've seen this Lean and the Toyota manufacturing system, for example, seems that you need to have a level of knowledge and understanding about the work before you're entitled, even allowed to actually mention some new and fresh ideas. is it the same on creativity at work? You still need to have an amount of knowledge, of experience, of expertise. I mean, we can call that in several ways, right? But is there some threshold there as well before we get to interesting ideas?
Definitively, when you are trying to make, I would say, something new out of a base, you need to understand the base. That's for sure. And you need to get into, and then you need to combine that with something else. And this is where there is very interesting value when you are combining new techniques like AI. We did not talk about AI, but that's a very important fundamental of what is coming next for sure in terms of expanding or not the imagination with a specific domain, being finance or lean or manufacturing or whatsoever. So I think there is a lot of strengths by combining two a base of knowledge into something new.
Thank you, Laurent. Albert, you already mentioned some of this in your comments about education, that we indeed start and do almost all the education at the very beginning, even if our generation is living in a world where we still need to continue developing ourselves. We see that with AI, with Gen AI, where there is lots of upskilling being implemented, but still the main trend is that we get upskilled at the very beginning. So how do we do that change? We have now long careers. We are turning points with technology, but certainly also the expertise and the impact of that technology. What would be your recommendation to keep that learning going on, to find the energy even when we are getting older? How do we keep refreshing ourselves?
Well, I think two things. One is we live in an age of specialization. We're educated, as I said earlier, from a very young age. We're at a very young age, and then at a very young age, we're pushed into a very particular field of education. So we specialize at whatever it is, 18 or 20 years old, in science, in the arts, whatever it may be. And this is a relatively modern concept, that we become specialists and experts in one field. If you look back at the 18th and 19th centuries, people would be educated across many fields. There's a English chemist called Humphrey Davy who invented the arc lamp, one of the first electric lamps. But he was also the editor of a famous book of poetry called the Lyrical Ballads by Wordsworth and Coleridge, these two great English poets. And the idea that somebody could be both a great scientist and a poet was completely, well, it was a normal idea that your mind would traverse the range of disciplines. And because of the weight of knowledge and the burden of needing to learn so much, we've been forced into this idea of being a particular type of person and living inside a silo of thought, you could say. So I think the way to counter that is to be a beginner at something new outside of your field of expertise. And history shows us that Nobel Prize winners in science, the greatest scientists, tend to have a disproportionate interest in the arts. And if you look at, again, I'm citing British and American examples, I'm sure there are lots of French examples of Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin, or Richard Feynman, the physicist. They were both artists. Alexander Fleming was a member of something called the Chelsea Arts Club in London, and he wasn't a very good artist. In fact, he was a very bad artist. But that's in a way not the point. The point is he was trying something new. He was exercising this idea of creativity, but also of being humble, of being something that kept his synapses alive with curiosity and energy, and something that he had to struggle with, which countered the weight of expertise and the burden of knowledge, and it's a good way of staying young in your mind if you're a beginner at something that is outside of your day job, as it were. And that's we see examples on the panel here of people who are doing exactly that. and it makes you more, better at in my view, and the evidence would suggest, it makes you better at what you do day to day. To be a beginner.
Thank you. Do you have some other real life application and examples on integrating creativity within organization, whether successful or not? That's a question from the chat. What would be the tips that you would give to the participants this morning?
I think the ones that I mentioned, I think it's about having an expectation of ideas. I think it's about finding people with that spark in their eyes, and then creating somehow an atmosphere, a relaxed atmosphere of humor, of talking about things that aren't necessarily about your job, things that disarm people, things that make people lower their guards, lower their fear settings, which I think are a natural setting in a work environment. That's what I would suggest.
Laurent, what would be your tips?
Well, dare, and ask the one around you to dare as well. There is so much to learn by trying. So just try yourself to be different in terms of the way of communicating. I like what you say, Albert. I think that is so important. And ask the people around you to try as well. There is so much to learn with that.
Fanny?
Let me put my consultant hat in answering the question and wrap up. So I'm not going to repeat what Albert and Laurent was saying, but I think I've shared the power of art residencies. Obviously, they need. You need to put in place some teaming and some resources for that. So it depends on the resource you have, but so you have special events like this one that you can create to signal to the organization that you want to open up creativity a little bit at scale in the organization. But I think it's, if you look about the structure and if you look about organization, it's a question of behaviors. It's also a question of creating these opportunities. So there are many ways to do that. So open space, creating space in your buildings. I mean, a lot now of teaming happens online. So whether online or in person, creates the space for people to diverge. My observation I've been in consulting 25 years now, we tend to rush very fast to conversions. So I think one thing that you can take away is create the space to diverge. When you think about anything, a meeting, a project, or whatever, just think about a portion of time in the project, in the meeting, in whatever situation we are, that is dedicated to divergence versus conversions. And I would really engage you to create more space for divergence, because that's how you will create the possibility that to dare, as Laurent was saying, or for others to express their ideas, bad or good. I think it's about promoting successes and role modeling, as we said, and it's about time. So you need to sanctuarize, or you need to make it explicit in the organization that there is time for that at the end of the day. And sorry, there is a second part of the question in the chat, and I don't think it's just limited to a specific type of situation, like we should create that space or we should open up creativity because we need innovation or we need disruption. I think for me, it's more, having a mindset of challenging the statu quo. So it could lead to big innovation or disruption, but at the end of the day, it's a mindset that you want people to bring every day in the workplace, so that even for the smallest things or situation, they have this mindset of, well, perhaps we could just make that current statu quo a little bit better by being more creative, and we could make this interaction, this situation, a little bit better for all of us by, doing something different.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining this morning. I wish you all an excellent week and an excellent break. And together with Fanny, we'll see you all next year, re-energized and passionate. Bye-bye.